The eviction officer stood on the porch that morning, holding documents that would shatter everything Ron Helmer thought he owned. His face went white as printer paper when the officer said my name. Marlene's hand flew to her mouth, and for the first time in 8 years, I watched fear replace the smugness in Ron's eyes. The house he'd been king of, the one he used to humiliate me just 24 hours earlier at Christmas dinner, wasn't his. It was mine. It had always been mine. But to understand how a single piece of paper could flip someone's entire world upside down, you need to know what happened the night before. My name is Kendall Pierce. I'm 24 years old, and I've spent most of my life being treated like a houseguest who overstayed her welcome. My mom, Marlene, remarried when I was 16, and from that day forward, Ron made sure I understood where I stood. His real kids, Troy and Melina, got the good bedrooms, the family vacations, the college funds. I got leftovers and silence. Marlene learned early that keeping Ron happy meant keeping me small. She chose peace over protecting me every single time. Have you ever lived somewhere that was supposed to be home but felt more like enemy territory? Christmas had always been rough in that house, but this year carried a different kind of weight. I knew something was off the second I walked into the dining room. Ron barely looked up from carving the turkey. Troy, who's 21 and acts like he runs the world because Daddy pays his rent, had this grin plastered on his face. Melina, 19 and just as spoiled, kept whispering to him and giggling. Marlene was quieter than usual, which is saying something for a woman who's made silence her superpower. Dinner started normal enough. Pass the mashed potatoes. Comment on the weather. Pretend we're a functional family for 2 hours. Then Ron stood up, wine glass in hand, and I knew whatever was coming wasn't good. His eyes landed on me with the kind of coldness that makes your stomach drop. I want to make an announcement, he said, and the room went still. Kendall is no longer part of this family. Just like that. No build-up, no explanation. Gifts tonight are only for my kids. Family is blood, and she's not blood. Troy nearly choked on his laugh. Melina covered her mouth, but her eyes danced with satisfaction. And my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, who used to braid my hair and tell me I was her whole world, said absolutely nothing. She stared at her plate like the pattern on the china was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. I waited. Waited for her to say something, anything. Defend me. Tell Ron he was out of line. But the seconds ticked by and her silence became its own answer. What do you do when the person who's supposed to love you most chooses a man over you? When you realize you've been fighting for a spot at a table where you were never really welcome? I didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't give them the satisfaction. I pushed back from the table, grabbed my coat from the hallway, and walked out into the cold December night. Nobody followed me. Nobody called my name. The door clicked shut behind me, and that was it. 24 years of trying to earn love from people who saw me as an inconvenience, gone in one dinner. I ended up at my friend Bianca's apartment across town. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without asking questions. Bianca's been my ride or die since high school, the kind of friend who shows up when everyone else disappears. She made tea I didn't drink and sat with me on her couch while I stared at the wall, trying to process what just happened. You can't go back there, Bianca said around midnight. You know that, right? I nodded, but where was I supposed to go? Everything I owned was in that house. My clothes, my laptop, the photo albums from when Dad was still alive and life made sense. But more than that, I'd just lost my family. Again. First when Dad died, then when Mom remarried, and now this final, brutal severing. Bianca disappeared into her room and came back with a stack of mail. This came to my place 2 weeks ago. You never picked it up. She handed me a thick envelope with a law firm's return address. Vale and Associates. I'd been using Bianca's address for important mail ever since Ron accidentally threw out my college acceptance letter 3 years ago. My hands shook as I held it. Another piece of bad news was the last thing I needed. What if it's debt collectors? I asked. What if it's something awful? Bianca sat next to me, shoulder pressed against mine. Or what if it's something that changes everything? The envelope was heavy official. I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out a letter on expensive paper. The first line made my heart stop. Dear Ms. Pierce, regarding the estate of Marcus Pierce and the property located at 4782 Elmwood Drive. That was Ron's house. The house where I'd just been excommunicated from the family. I read faster, the words blurring together. Grandfather Marcus. Will updated 8 years ago. Primary beneficiary. Legal ownership transferred upon death. My hands were shaking so hard Bianca had to hold the letter steady so I could finish reading. The house Ron had been living in, the one he'd been ruling like a tyrant, the one he just used to humiliate me in front of everyone, it wasn't his. It was mine. It had been mine since Grandpa Marcus died when I was 16. But there was a catch, and it hit me like ice water. I had to claim the inheritance before my 20th birthday or it would default to my mother's estate. My 25th birthday was in 2 weeks. 14 days. Had Marlene known about this the whole time? Bianca grabbed my shoulders. Kendall, do you understand what this means? I looked up at her, and for the first time since leaving that dinner table, I felt something other than heartbreak. It was small and dangerous and growing by the second. Ron thought he could erase me. Thought he could decide I wasn't family and that would be the end of it. He had no idea what was coming for him. I called the law firm before the sun came up. A receptionist with a kind voice told me attorney Preston Vale could see me at 9. Bianca drove me downtown, both of us running on no sleep and pure adrenaline. My mind kept spinning back to Grandpa Marcus, trying to remember details I'd buried after he died. He'd been Dad's father, a quiet man who built houses for a living and never said more than necessary. But he'd always seen through Ron. I remembered that now, sitting in the waiting room of Vale and Associates. The way Grandpa Marcus would watch Ron at family dinners, his jaw tight, his eyes narrow. How he'd pull me aside and ask if I was okay, really okay. I'd always said yes because I was 16 and didn't know how to explain that my own home felt like quicksand. Preston Vale wasn't what I expected. Mid-50s, sharp suit, but his handshake was warm and his eyes were sad. Your grandfather was a good man, he said, gesturing for me to sit. He came to me 8 years ago, about 6 months before he passed. Said he needed to make sure you were protected. Protected from what? I'd asked. Preston pulled out a file thick enough to be a novel. From people who would take what was rightfully yours. He laid out the facts like he was building a case, which I guess he was. Grandpa Marcus had owned the house on Elmwood Drive outright. Paid it off over 30 years of hard work. When Dad died and Mom remarried Ron, Grandpa Marcus watched Ron move into that house like he owned it. Your grandfather didn't trust Ron Helmer, Preston said. He saw a man who married your mother for stability, not love. A man who would push you out the second it was convenient. My throat went tight. Grandpa Marcus had seen it all coming, and I'd been too young to understand the warning signs. The will was crystal clear. The house belonged to me. Mom had the right to live there, but ownership transferred to me on my 18th birthday with one condition: I had to claim it before turning 25. If I didn't, it would default to Mom's estate, which meant Ron would eventually get his hands on it. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice cracked. Why did I have to find out like this? Preston's expression hardened. Your mother was informed of the will's contents when your grandfather died. She signed documentation acknowledging the terms. The room tilted. Marlene knew. For 8 years, she knew that house was mine and never said a word. While Ron treated me like garbage in my own house, while he gave his kids everything and me nothing, while he stood up at Christmas dinner and told everyone I wasn't family, she knew. There's more, Preston said, and I didn't think I could handle more. He slid a stack of papers across his desk. Financial records. Loan applications. Refinancing documents. Ron Helmer has refinanced the property 3 times in the past 8 years. He's taken out over $200,000 in equity loans. My stomach dropped. But he doesn't own it. How is that legal? Preston's jaw tightened. It's not. He forged your signature on the ownership documents. Claimed you'd signed over your rights when you turned 18. The bank never verified it properly. Fraud. Ron had committed fraud. And Marlene had watched it happen. You're owed approximately $240,000 in back rent and illegal equity extraction, Preston continued. But that's not the worst part. How could there be a worst part? Ron has the house under contract to sell to a developer. The deal closes in 5 days. If that sale goes through before you file your claim with the county, you could lose everything. 5 days. I had 5 days to stop Ron from stealing my inheritance and leaving me with nothing. Bianca, who'd been sitting silent beside me, finally spoke. What does Kendall need to do? Preston laid out the plan. File an emergency injunction to stop the sale. Present the will and proof of ownership to the county. Serve Ron with eviction papers. It was aggressive and it was fast, and it would blow up whatever was left of my relationship with my mother. Can I ask you something? I looked at Preston, this stranger who knew more about my family's secrets than I did. Did my grandfather know my mom would do this? Did he know she'd choose Ron over me? Preston hesitated, then reached into the file and pulled out a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in Grandpa Marcus's handwriting. He left this for you. Asked me to give it to you when you claimed the house. My hands trembled as I took it. He knew, didn't he? Preston's silence was answer enough. We left his office with a plan. File the paperwork that afternoon. Serve Ron the next morning. Get ahead of this before he could hide assets or create more problems. Bianca drove while I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the envelope I couldn't open yet. Your mom really knew this whole time? Bianca's voice was tight with anger. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Kendall, that's not just lying. That's stealing. That's letting her husband steal from her own daughter. I knew. God, I knew. But knowing and accepting are different things. Part of me kept waiting for there to be some explanation, some reason that would make it okay. There wasn't one. We stopped for coffee we didn't drink and sat in the car outside Bianca's apartment. What are you going to do? She asked. I thought about Ron's face at dinner. The way he'd looked at me like I was nothing. The way Troy and Melina had laughed. The way Mom had sat there, silent, letting it all happen. I thought about 8 years of being invisible in my own house. I'm going to take back what's mine, I said. The next morning, Preston met me at the county clerk's office. We filed the emergency injunction. The clerk's eyes went wide when she saw the documents: fraud, forgery, illegal refinancing. This is going to make waves, she warned. Good. Let it. By noon, we had the eviction notice ready. 30 days to vacate the property. Preston offered to have a process server deliver it, but I shook my head. I want to be there. I want to see his face. Bianca squeezed my hand. You sure about this? No. I wasn't sure about anything except that I was done being erased. We pulled up to the house at 1 in the afternoon. Ron's truck was in the driveway. Marlene's car too. My heart hammered against my ribs as Preston and I walked to the front door. This was it. The moment everything changed. I rang the doorbell and waited. Footsteps inside. The door swung open and Ron stood there, same smug expression he'd worn at dinner. Then he saw Preston's suit and the folder in his hands. What's this? Ron's voice lost some of its confidence. Preston extended his hand. Preston Vale, attorney for Kendall Pierce. I have documents that require your immediate attention. Ron's face shifted from confusion to anger. I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to leave my property. That's the thing, Mr. Helmer. Preston's voice was ice. It's not your property. It never was. Ron's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, anger, disbelief, and finally something that looked like fear. He tried to slam the door, but Preston had already wedged his briefcase in the frame. I strongly suggest you look at these documents before making this worse for yourself, Preston said, his voice calm and professional. Marlene appeared behind Ron, her face pale. The second she saw me standing there, she knew. Her hand went to her throat, and I watched her eyes fill with tears. Not tears of relief or joy at seeing her daughter. Tears of panic. She knew exactly why I was there. Kendall, sweetheart, what's going on? The term of endearment made me want to scream. She hadn't called me sweetheart in years. Let them in, Ron. Marlene's voice was barely a whisper. Ron turned to look at her, and something passed between them. Some silent conversation that confirmed what I already suspected. They'd both known. Both of them had been lying to me for 8 years. Ron stepped back, and we walked into the house that was legally mine. Troy and Melina were on the couch, watching this unfold like it was reality TV. Troy had his phone out, probably texting his friends about the drama. Melina's expression was more cautious, like she was starting to realize this wasn't entertainment. Preston opened his briefcase and pulled out the documents. The will. The property deed. The county records showing ownership had transferred to me when I turned 18. This is ridiculous, Ron said, but his voice had lost its edge. That house belonged to Marcus. Then it became marital property when Marlene and I married. Preston shook his head. The house was never marital property. Marcus Pierce updated his will specifically to prevent that. The property transferred directly to his granddaughter, Kendall Pierce, upon his death with life estate rights for Marlene Pierce. You have no legal claim to this property. I watched Ron's face as the reality hit him. All those years of acting like he owned everything, like he was doing us a favor by letting us exist in his space. You refinanced this house 3 times, I said, finding my voice. Took out over $200,000. Using forged documents with my name on them. Marlene made a small sound, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Ron's eyes darted to her, then back to me. I don't know what lies you've been told, but Preston cut him off. We have the original loan applications with signatures that don't match Kendall's. We have affidavits from handwriting experts. We have bank records showing you deposited the money into accounts Kendall has never had access to. Would you like me to continue? The room went silent except for the sound of Marlene crying quietly. Troy put his phone down. Even he was starting to understand this was serious. You tried to sell my house, I continued, my voice stronger now. You have a contract closing in 5 days. Except the developer is going to be very interested to learn you don't actually own the property you're selling. Ron's face turned red. This is extortion. You're trying to take advantage of an old man. You're 52, I interrupted. And I'm not taking anything. I'm claiming what's already mine. What's been mine since I was 18. Preston pulled out another document. This is an emergency injunction blocking the sale. It was filed this morning. The title company has been notified. The sale cannot proceed. Marlene stood up, her whole body shaking. Kendall, please, can we talk about this? There has to be some misunderstanding. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She was 51 but looked older. Years of stress and bad choices etched into her face. Did you know about Grandpa Marcus's will? I asked her directly. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. It's complicated, honey. Did you know? My voice was sharp enough to cut. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, but you have to understand, Ron needed stability. We needed stability. You were going to college, you'd move out eventually. It seemed like the practical thing. You let him steal from me. The words came out flat and cold. For 8 years, you watched him treat me like garbage in my own house. You sat there last night while he told everyone I wasn't family. And the whole time you knew. Marlene reached for me, but I stepped back. Preston cleared his throat. Mr. Helmer, Miss Pierce, I need to serve you with official notice. You have 30 days to vacate this property. All personal belongings must be removed. Any damage to the property will result in additional legal action. Ron exploded. You can't do this. I have rights. I've been living here for 8 years. On stolen property, Preston said calmly. With fraudulent loans. Mr. Helmer, I strongly suggest you consult with an attorney because the district attorney's office will likely be very interested in your refinancing activities. The word criminal hung in the air unspoken but understood. Ron's face went from red to pale. You're going to press charges? He asked, looking at me. Was I? 24 hours ago, I'd walked out of this house broken and defeated. Now I held every card. Now Ron was the one looking scared and small. That depends, I said slowly. On whether you cooperate. On whether you vacate peacefully. On whether you accept responsibility for what you've done. Troy stood up. This is insane. Mom, tell her she can't do this. But Marlene just sat there, crying into her hands. For once, she had nothing to say. Melina surprised me by speaking up. Dad, if you forged her signature, that's illegal. Like, actually illegal. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw something almost like respect in her eyes. Or maybe just fear. Preston handed Ron the official documents. You have 30 days from today. I suggest you use that time wisely. We turned to leave, and I felt lighter than I had in years. But then Marlene's voice stopped me at the door. Please, Kendall. Don't do this. Where will we go? What are we supposed to do? I turned back to look at her. The woman who gave birth to me. Who raised me alone after Dad died. Who promised me we'd always be a team. Who chose a man over her own daughter again and again and again. You had a choice every single day for 8 years, I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. Every time he put me down, every time he chose his kids over me, every time he made me feel like I didn't belong, you chose him. You chose silence. You chose his comfort over my dignity. Now live with that choice. Marlene's face crumpled. I'm your mother, she whispered. Mothers protect their children, I said. You protected him. Then I walked out, Preston behind me, and this time when the door closed, I was the one who chose to leave. I was the one with the power. And for the first time in 8 years, I was the one going home to a place where I actually belonged. Bianca was waiting in the car. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Sad. Angry. Relieved. Terrified. Powerful. Free, I finally said. I feel free. But as we drove away, I couldn't shake the image of Marlene's face, the genuine panic in her eyes when she realized what she'd lost. Not the house. Me. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Preston kept me updated on everything, Ron scrambling to find an attorney, the developer threatening to sue him for misrepresentation, the bank launching an investigation into the fraudulent refinancing. The house of cards Ron built was collapsing, and he'd built it on my foundation. I moved into a small studio apartment across town. Bianca helped me move the few things I'd retrieved from Elmwood Drive. It wasn't much. Most of my childhood was still in that house, but I couldn't bring myself to go back yet. Marlene called 17 times the first week. I didn't answer. She showed up at Bianca's apartment twice. I didn't answer the door. She sent texts that got longer and more desperate each day. Please talk to me. I made mistakes, but I'm still your mother. Ron is falling apart. That last one almost made me laugh. Ron was falling apart because for the first time in his life, actions had consequences. Preston called on day 9 with news. Ron's attorney contacted me. They want to negotiate. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by boxes I hadn't unpacked. Negotiate what? The house is mine. The law is clear. Preston's voice was careful. They're asking if you'd consider allowing them to stay if Ron pays fair market rent and returns the money from the refinancing. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Kendall, it's a substantial amount of money. I don't want his money. I want him gone. There was a pause on the other end. Understood. I'll communicate that to his attorney. After we hung up, I sat there wondering if I was being vindictive. If I was becoming the kind of person who used power to hurt people the way Ron had hurt me. But then I remembered Christmas dinner. His face when he said I wasn't family. Mom's silence. No, I wasn't being cruel. I was setting a boundary. Day 12, Preston called again. We need to discuss something. His tone made my stomach knot. What happened? Ron's been arrested. The words hung in the air. The bank pressed charges for fraud. He's been released on bail, but Kendall, this is getting serious. He's facing potential prison time. Part of me felt satisfied. Part of me felt sick. What does that mean for the eviction? It proceeds as planned. But his attorney is going to argue that you orchestrated this vindicatively. That you waited until the worst possible moment to claim the house to maximize damage. I closed my eyes. I didn't even know about the house until 2 weeks ago. I have proof of when I received the letter. I know. And we'll present that. But I need you to be prepared for this to get ugly. Ron's desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. That night, I finally opened the envelope Grandpa Marcus had left me. I'd been carrying it around for 2 weeks, too afraid to read whatever was inside. But sitting alone in my apartment, walls bare and future uncertain, I needed to hear his voice. The letter was dated 3 weeks before he died. His handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear. Dear Kendall, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've found out about the house. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you myself. I'm sorry I won't be there when Ron shows his true colors. But I need you to understand something, sweetheart. This house isn't just wood and brick. It's proof that you matter. My vision blurred with tears. I built that house with my own hands before your dad was born. Every room holds memories of a family that loved each other. When your dad died, I watched your light dim. When your mom married Ron, I watched it almost go out completely. I saw how he looked at you, like you were in his way. I saw how she chose peace over protecting you. And I couldn't let them take the last piece of your father from you. The letter continued. The house is yours because you deserve roots. You deserve a place that can't be taken away by someone else's whims. But more than that, I need you to know that family isn't blood, Kendall. Family is who shows up. Who protects you. Who sees your worth even when you can't see it yourself. You are worthy. You always have been. Don't let anyone make you forget that. He signed it, your grandpa Marcus, always. I sat on my floor and cried harder than I had since Dad died. Cried for the grandfather who saw me when no one else did. Cried for the little girl who just wanted her mom to choose her. Cried for the woman I was becoming, harder and sharper than I ever wanted to be. Bianca found me there an hour later. She didn't ask questions, just sat down and held me while I fell apart. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, I finally said. Marcus left you that house for a reason, Bianca said softly. He saw what was happening and gave you a way out. You're not wrong for taking it. Day 14, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Troy's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kendall. His voice was shaking. You need to come to the house right now. My heart stopped. Why? What happened? It's Mom. She collapsed last night. The ambulance just took her. Dad's at the police station, can't get out because of the bail conditions. Melina's at work and I don't know what to do. I was in my car before I'd fully processed the words. Bianca was still asleep on my couch, so I left her a note and drove to Mercy General Hospital. Troy met me in the emergency room waiting area. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. What happened? I asked. She's been having panic attacks. Getting worse every day. Last night she couldn't breathe, started saying her chest hurt. They think it might have been her heart. Troy's hands were shaking. The doctors are running tests, but they said stress can cause all kinds of problems. Kendall, I know things are messed up, but she's still. Where is she? I interrupted. He led me to a room where Marlene lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to monitors. She looked small and fragile, nothing like the woman who used to feel larger than life. Her eyes opened when I walked in. Kendall. Her voice was barely a whisper. You came. I stood at the foot of the bed, keeping distance between us. Troy said you collapsed. She nodded, tears sliding down her face. I'm so sorry. For everything. I was wrong. I was so wrong. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The apology. The acknowledgement. But standing there looking at my mother broken in a hospital bed, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Why? I asked. Why did you choose him over me? Marlene closed her eyes. I was afraid of being alone. After your father died, I was drowning. Ron offered stability, a family unit. And I convinced myself that you'd be okay because you're strong. Stronger than me. But I was wrong to put that on you. Wrong to sacrifice you for my own fear. You knew about the house for 8 years. My voice cracked. You watched him treat me like nothing. I know. She was sobbing now. I told myself it was temporary. That I'd tell you eventually. But every day it got easier to stay quiet. Easier to pretend everything was fine. And then last Christmas happened and I realized I'd lost you. Not because of the house. Because I stopped being your mother. A nurse came in to check Marlene's vitals, giving me a moment to collect myself. Could I forgive this? Should I? Did forgiveness mean letting her off the hook, or did it mean freeing myself from the anger eating me alive? I don't know if I can forgive you, I said when the nurse left. Not right now. Maybe not ever. Marlene nodded. I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Kendall, please know that losing you is the worst thing I've ever done to myself. My phone buzzed. Preston. I need to take this. I stepped into the hallway and answered. Kendall, we have a problem. Ron violated his bail conditions. He tried to access the house last night. There's damage to the back door. The police are looking for him now. Ron was found 6 hours later trying to board a bus to Nevada. The police brought him back in handcuffs, and this time there was no bail. His attorney called Preston in a panic, trying to negotiate anything that would keep Ron out of prison. "He's willing to pay full restitution," the attorney said. "Return every penny from the refinancing plus damages. He'll plead guilty to the fraud charges if Kendall agrees to a suspended sentence." I sat in Preston's office, exhausted from a sleepless night at the hospital. Marlene was stable, but doctors wanted to keep her for observation. Stress-induced cardiac event, they called it. Her heart was physically fine, but emotionally she was shattered. "What do you think?" I asked Preston. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "I think Ron deserves to face full consequences for what he did. But I also think you need to decide what kind of person you want to be on the other side of this." That hit hard. What kind of person did I want to be? Someone who demanded blood for blood? Or someone who could be strong enough to show mercy without being weak? If he pleads guilty and pays restitution, what happens to him? Preston consulted his notes. Likely probation, community service, permanent record. He'd lose his contractor's license. He'd struggle to find work. But he wouldn't go to prison. I thought about Christmas dinner. About 8 years of being invisible. About Grandpa Marcus's letter. Family is who shows up. Who protects you? Who sees your worth? Ron had never seen my worth. But that didn't mean I had to become like him. "Tell his attorney I'll accept the plea deal with conditions," I said. "Full restitution plus $30,000 in damages for emotional distress and illegal occupancy. He has 90 days to vacate, not 30, but if he tries to contact me or damage the property again, the deal is void and I'll push for maximum sentencing." Preston raised an eyebrow. "That's generous." "It's strategic," I corrected. "I want him gone, but I don't want to spend the next year in court battles while he appeals everything. I want to move forward with my life." The deal was finalized within a week. Ron pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud. The judge looked disgusted reading the details of what he'd done. "You stole from a child," she said from the bench. "Your own stepdaughter. That's a special kind of betrayal." Ron stood there in his cheap suit, looking nothing like the man who dominated that house for 8 years. He looked small and scared and old. When he glanced back at the gallery where I sat with Preston, there was something in his eyes. Not quite remorse. More like shock that he'd actually faced consequences. The gavel came down. Guilty. 5 years probation. 500 hours community service. Full restitution. He'd be paying me back for the rest of his life. Troy and Melina moved in with Ron's sister in Nevada. Troy sent me a single text message before they left. "I'm sorry we treated you like that. We were wrong." It wasn't much, but it was more than I expected. Melina didn't reach out at all. Maybe she would someday. Maybe she wouldn't. I couldn't control that. Marlene was released from the hospital with medication for anxiety and a referral to a therapist. She asked if she could see me and I said yes, but I picked a neutral location. A coffee shop downtown where we wouldn't have history weighing on every corner. She looked better physically, but her eyes held a sadness that went bone deep. "I don't expect you to trust me again," she said. "I know I destroyed that. But I want you to know I'm getting help. Real help." "Good," I said, and meant it. "I'm not ready to have you in my life yet, Mom. Maybe someday. But right now I need space to figure out who I am without all this weight." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Can I ask one thing?" "What?" "The house. What are you going to do with it?" I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. At first, I'd planned to sell it. Take the money and start fresh somewhere far away. But the more I thought about Grandpa Marcus building it with his own hands, about the memories it held of Dad, about what it represented, the more I knew I couldn't just sell it to strangers. "I'm turning it into something good," I told her. "A transitional home for young adults aging out of foster care. Kids who need a place to land while they figure out life. I'm calling it Marcus's house." Marlene's face crumbled. "Oh, Kendall. Your grandfather would have loved that." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm doing it." I left the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had in months. Bianca helped me start the process of converting the house. We had to get it licensed, pass inspections, set up a nonprofit. It was complicated and exhausting, and the most purposeful thing I'd ever done. The first resident moved in on a Tuesday in April. Her name was Zara, 18 years old, aged out of the system 3 months earlier. She'd been sleeping in her car and working 2 jobs trying to save for an apartment. When I showed her the room that would be hers, she cried. "How much is rent?" she asked. "Nothing for the first 6 months," I told her. "After that, 10% of your income until you're stable enough to move out on your own. The only rules are you have to be working or in school, no illegal activity, and you have to contribute to the house in some way. Cooking, cleaning, helping with repairs. We're a community here." Zara looked at me like I'd handed her the moon. "Why are you doing this?" I thought about that question. About being 16 and feeling like I didn't belong anywhere. About Christmas dinner and walking out into the cold with nowhere to go. About Grandpa Marcus's letter and his reminder that family is choice. Because someone gave me a foundation when I needed it most, I said. Now it's my turn to pass it on. Over the next few months, 3 more young people moved in. Marcus's house became exactly what Grandpa had wanted, a place where people chose to show up for each other. Bianca quit her corporate job to run the house full-time. We built a partnership that was stronger than blood, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Did I think about Ron and Mom and Troy and Melina? Sometimes. Usually late at night when the house was quiet and I'd walk through the rooms Grandpa built. I'd wonder if Mom was sticking with therapy. If Ron was learning anything from his consequences. If Troy and Melina ever thought about how they'd treated me. Mostly, though, I thought about the future. About the young people living under this roof who needed what I'd needed, proof that they mattered. That they were worthy of protection and love and stability. Marlene asked if she could volunteer at the house. I said maybe, but not yet. She needed to do her own healing before she could help heal others. 6 months later, she asked again. This time I said yes, with conditions. She could help with administrative work, but she couldn't have direct contact with residents until she'd completed a full year of therapy. She agreed without hesitation. The first time she came to volunteer, she stood in the doorway of the house she'd lived in for 8 years and cried. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "For all of it." "I know," I said. And I did know. I still wasn't ready to call her mom again. Still wasn't ready to let her back into my inner circle. But I could acknowledge that she was trying. That she was showing up, even when it was hard. One evening in late summer, I stood on the porch watching Zara teach one of the newer residents how to change a car tire. The sun was setting golden over the neighborhood, and the sound of their laughter carried on the warm breeze. Bianca came out and stood beside me, 2 cold drinks in her hands. "You did it," she said. "You turned something broken into something beautiful." I took the drink and smiled. We did it. This was never a one-person thing. You know what your grandfather would say if he could see this? I shook my head. He'd say you finally understand. Family isn't blood. It's not who shares your DNA or your last name. Family is who shows up when things get hard. Who sees you at your worst and chooses to stay. Who builds you up instead of tearing you down. She was right. Ron had stood at that Christmas dinner table and said family was blood, that I didn't belong because I wasn't his. He'd been wrong. Family was this. Zara and the other residents helping each other through hard days. Bianca dropping everything to support me when my world fell apart. Grandpa Marcus building this house with his own hands to give me something no one could take away. I'd lost the family I was born into. Lost the mother who should have protected me and the stepfamily who should have accepted me. But I'd gained something better. Something real. Something I'd built with intention and love and the understanding that belonging isn't given. It's created. Ron was right about one thing, family is a choice. He chose wrong. I chose better. If this story made you feel something, hit subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because stories like this matter. Someone watching right now is sitting at their own Christmas dinner, feeling invisible. Someone is questioning whether they're wrong for standing up to family who treats them like nothing. This is for them. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe real family is built, not born. And if you're still not subscribing, comment and tell me why. Let's talk about it. Because this community right here is proof that chosen family is the strongest kind. Welcome home.